After writing 2 transformational books myself and supporting many other beings to do the same, I've become enthralled by the deep and mysterious magic that's activated when we choose to say yes to ourselves and commit to the book writing journey. Of course, we want to inspire change and new perspectives in our readers, but the transformation that happens as an author, both throughout the writing process and by actually releasing your book into the world, is surprisingly potent. I know I've been blindsided in the most disruptive and delicious ways by some of the changes my books have brought into my life. Writing a book is like casting a spell. Although we can never be completely sure what's going to be unleashed during the process, we choose to do it anyway. This Unbound one is a heroic journey. Each book has the potential to be a magical portal, a doorway to a new world, both for you and your reader. Each book has a very specific medicine that it's here to share with us. And each book gives us the opportunity to alchemize the magnificent imperfection of our experience into gold. The truth is that anyone can write a book. We could all get a few thousand words down and put them together. But what fascinates me is what happens when we allow the book writing process to go deeper. When we say, fuck it, get naked and dive way down beneath the surface. Letting go of the shoulds and any need to be acceptable, sensible, or approved of. What fascinates me is what happens when we make ourselves fully available to being transformed by the very act of writing a book. This is Unbound Writing, and this is the process we'll be exploring together here in the Unbound Writers Club. I'm Nicola Humber, author and founder of the Unbound Press, and I help magical beings to write the transformational book they're really here to write at this time. I'm your guide here in the Unbound Writers Club, and the aim of this podcast is to help you to feel supported, encouraged, activated as you embark on your book writing journey. Whether you're a first-time author or have many books out in the world, my hope is that you will find something here to inspire you. Let's dive in.
Hi there, welcome to the Unbound Writers Club. This is Jo Gifford. I'm one of the team here at the Unbound Press, and you may have met me if you've published a book with us. If you haven't, I'm part of the team and I help Nicola with the podcast, with social media creation, and I'm also the one that you talk to when you want to bring your book to life and heartstorm into how to share your voice and create content around your book. So I'm an author also with the team. I published Brilliance Unboxed last year, and I'm currently writing Wild Currents. So I'm very much embedded in our gorgeous family here at the Unbound Press, and it's such an honour to do this work. So this episode is slightly different. As you may have seen, every Tuesday over on our Instagram page, Nicola hosts an Unbound Writers Club live interview with one of our authors. And so this podcast episode just brings you some little sneaky peeks and behind the scenes, some little snippets of some of those conversations, which are just so juicy, each one of them. And we've just chosen some pieces from the most recent 4 interviews with Sarah Lloyd, who is also on the team here with the Unbound Press. She is author of Connecting the Dots, and she's currently curating and creating the collaborative book Wake Up Mother. You'll hear from Zoë Foster, who is the creator of Sacred Expression Yoga. She's an embodied expression artist, and she's also one of our authors, and she's currently writing It's Written in the Stars. You'll hear from Carrie Myers, who's a poet, a writer, an author, and is currently creating the collaborative book Soul Shine. And you'll hear from Jennifer Flint, who's author of the novel Wild Egg, which is all about midlife, family, and life-changing decisions around motherhood. Now, all of these incredible humans have been approaching their books in different ways, and the Unbound writing process is different for all of us. It unravels so much within us, and also the Unbound writing process itself is a real journey. And for those of you who have been on it or who are embarking on it, you will absolutely know. And in each of these Instagram and TV Unbound Writers Club live interviews, each of these women have shared their stories as to how their books came into being, as to their writing process, and how they're bringing this work into the world. So this episode just brings you some snippets of each of those interviews so that you can get a taster, a little Unbound Press kind of immersion into your ears of how these books are coming to life. And of course, you can actually catch up on the full interviews over on our Instagram page, on the Instagram TV tab on Instagram at the Unbound Press. So you'll find us over there, and you can also catch the live sessions on Tuesdays. It's usually on a lunchtime that Nicola does these interviews. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the wonderful ladies. You'll hear them in sequential order. You'll hear from Sarah, you'll hear from Zoe, you'll hear from Carrie, and you'll hear from Jennifer. You will find all the links and all the details of each of our wonderful ladies in the show notes. And do let us know what you think of the Unbound Writers Club live interviews, and enjoy this little snippet session of some Unbound magic.
Tell us what's coming through for this book right now. What is your sense of what this book is, Wake Up Mother?
The sense of this book is so much bigger than me. That is very evident. And so for the last couple of years, I've been getting this tug kind of, we need to talk about mums that are basically being woken up through having children, which was my personal journey. And I kind of thought about it and sat with it, and still sit there and still think, who am I to talk about that? Because my children are relatively young, they're 8 and 6, but I know how much of a transformational experience I went through just, becoming a mother. And I guess that was kind of the crux of the idea. It was, I kept getting it in the shower, like, wake up, mum, wake up kind of thing. And it's been compounded by everything else that's been going on over the last couple of years. It's also not limited. I feel like it's not limited to actually giving birth to human children. It's actually giving birth to businesses and communities and changing the way we do things. So and actually sitting on Mother Earth. So you can see, it's so big.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, probably even as you were writing, connecting the dots, but definitely pretty soon afterwards, you were like, oh, there's this other book, and I feel it's about kind of motherhood and like waking up as a mum. So it's been there for a while. And I wonder how you knew, like how it went from being a book that felt like it was, just for you to write, to one that you feel called to be a collaboration.
I guess one thing that's certainly opened my eyes in the last couple of years is so in my work as a PR, I've traditionally worked with a certain type of person or business, and in the last year I've worked with all kinds of different people, from fairies to yoga swamis to mothers to I worked with a company in the trans arena. I've worked with lots of different types of people that I potentially had never have even come into my sphere, shall we say. And it just opened my eyes, because it's not just about my journey, me as a white female mother. There is so many different connotations. The word mother is such a loaded term, actually. And I feel like it's not just limited to what you see in the dictionary, is like, you have a child. There is so much more to the word than we give it credit for. And I feel like there's an honouring as well that needs to take place, and it's not just, and again, that's why it feels so much bigger than me. It feels like there's so many people out there that could be called to share their version of what a mother looks like. I mean, there's going to be a lot of us who are physically mothers with children who have, you know, really felt it the last 2 years, and I know that is a big, you know, I felt sacred rage around the way that it was, you know, we were just relied on to pick up the slack, shall we say? Which is an awful way to put it, but that's what our society has created us to be. You know? And I want to explode it. I want to explore it, and I want to invite other people to get involved and feel the raw, shall we say? Because I do feel like, you know, space holders, business owners, anyone who's in creator mode, the creatrix of the world, that is the mother energy. So.
Completely. And like birthing books, do you know what I mean? It's a really real birthing process. And Nix is just saying, yes, it is nurturing, which is often just seen as mothering, but nurturing comes into many aspects of life for a very diverse group. Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost like going beyond our traditional kind of notions of motherhood, which I love. I think that's going to be a really powerful part of this book.
And also,
go on.
The piece that came through for me, and I think this is just shining a light on a personal situation, but it might help others, is when I had my children, I had postnatal depression. And I feel like, one, that's a really triggering term, but also, two, I feel like it's a splintering. And this came through, and we have this splintering where we're leaving our old self behind and we're becoming this new person. And we have this small child or thing that we're creating, birthing, nurturing, whatever it is. I feel like that in itself, I feel like there's some language that we can change and, you know, create some new spells, but also talking into that postnatal depression piece. My husband would often step up and become the nurturer while I was kind of done. And I used to feel very triggered and very sad that I wasn't, you know, able to be a mother 24/7, because we put so much pressure on ourselves, because that's just, well, me personally, I'm sure others are the same, but there's this nurturing energy in the masculine and the male that we also forget to acknowledge and honor. So I feel like I want to talk into that too. I feel like it's everything. I mean, I did sit there and think, oh, should this be a book for mothers that have children? But there's so many self-help books out there. There's so many books that teach us how to do motherhood, but not be a mother.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Sorry, that breathe.
But when we were connecting around this book, like towards the end of last year, like what was coming through really strongly was like, it's about more than like our normal idea of a collaborative book as well, where everybody just, you know, writes a chapter or whatever, which is transformational in itself. I'm not kind of diminishing that, but this feels like it's more of a process around it. Like whoever is called to this, like including, like obviously you, Sarah, you're holding space for it, but whichever contributors are called to this, it really is going on a journey together and like together feeling into what the book actually wants to be.
Yeah, I feel like you're saying, I feel like, again, this is just going to blow apart perhaps the way that collaborations are done. I just feel that it's going to be almost like sitting in a circle and because if anybody does ask me, you know, what do you want from me, and it's kind of like, yes, okay, a contribution and a chapter, but I do feel it's so much more than that, and I don't want to be limited to that confines. I almost feel like it's taking topics and we're all weaving into the topics or having perspective, and, you know, to honor it fully. I feel again that it's going to be a 9-month process.
Yeah.
Ironically. So I feel it is kind of, yes, we can talk about our birth, whether it's sort of, there's a few things that are coming through for me in that it is the maiden, mother and throne energy. There is that aspect of it, but there is also the aspect of actually physically being pregnant and then giving birth, because there will be mothers out there who will not feel. I feel like the society we live in, there's so many things we can explore around. We give people NCT groups, for example, but we don't really give them much more support after the baby is born. And I feel like that is how society has become about everything. It's like you get all this nurturing, this thing arrives, and then there's nothing. And it's the same, that's where the Unbound Press is different with the books, right? Because you're then supporting us through the publishing and then the books appearing and doing their magic. I just feel like we're very much we don't honor it enough, because the mother does still need mothering. And I've spoken to people about contributing who have their own kind of projects going on, and I'm completely honor that. But I also know that some of those people are going to be the ones that mother me through this, because I do want to attract and bring in the right people so we can share the most amazing magic. It just feels big and feels so much. I feel like the book is the start. I think there's going to be more to this than just a book. I feel like what it feels to me. So yeah.
I want to talk about like the book or the books that you were thinking you were going to write before, because I know when we first connected you had a book in mind, and I think you'd written a book proposal, or you were working on a book proposal, and I wonder how that differs from It's Written in the Stars.
So in the foreword to this book, that I think is going to be in there, I've basically said that this is the opposite, like complete polar opposite of everything I've tried to write before, because I come from an academic background, and then when I left academia, I went into academic publishing, and that is just I was so ingrained in that way of being, of researching and cross-referencing and backing up everything you say with multiple kind of references and all the rest of it, and having lots of quotes from people that know stuff. Honestly, I think the reason that I never I always ended up abandoning those books is because there was nothing of me really in it. It's really hard to explain, but I had my vision and I had my kind of theories, obviously, but really there was nothing self-expressed in there. It was a bit like, well, here's just a lot of information that I've gathered, and here's my take on that, very academic basically. And it wasn't what my soul wanted, and I slaved, Nicola. I slaved, especially at the book previous to this, where I sent out book proposals to a number of agents and publishers, and I just my soul knew that there was something else, another path, and I resisted it until it kind of really came through strongly for me, because I really, really felt that, or really, really thought that having that validation was important. That validation of an agent and of a, traditional publisher, and all of the ways that people feel that you have to do a book, because otherwise it's not a real book.
Yeah.
And I had to grow through that, honestly. I had to grow through that judgment and come to it from a completely different place that is not in my head.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Zoe, because I'm sure so many watching and listening will resonate. Like, I know so often we've been conditioned to write in a particular way, and like you say, if we come from an academic or a corporate or both of those backgrounds, there's this expectation that you have to write and everything has to be backed up, and it's certainly not enough just to come from you.
We can't just make it up.
Do that. Don't make it up. And I guess it's the same with being a visual artist as well, isn't it? like, you know, which is such a huge part of who you are and what you do, there can be this reluctance or resistance to kind of owning the fact that you're an artist, the same as with an author or writer. Has that showed up for you as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. But the interesting thing is, because, you know, I have, like, I've done, you know, art college courses and stuff, but I've never been immersed in that kind of academic pathway in the arts. It's just been kind of something that I've explored in my own time and just, you know, had fun with. And so when I came back to it, it was very much like, oh, I can just have fun with it. And actually that was the main purpose. And I have to bring myself back to that whenever I feel like I'm getting too serious with, like, you know, what is or isn't selling, or, you know, whatever, like, comes up. But actually I think that was really important, was that I came back to it in the first place to just express myself. And it was during the pandemic. It was like quite near the beginning of the pandemic, and obviously we were kind of locked up in our little 2x2 house, and, you know, with 2 kids and a tiny garden, and we lived on a terrace. There was like tons of other people all doing the same thing, and I just needed an outlet that wasn't verbal, because there was so much like verbal noise at that time, and so much of it was fear-based, and yeah, my soul just said, right, you need to get on some really big paper or, you know, because I had some canvases like lying around, and yeah, the urge was like, and I'd never really painted that big before. I'd kind of I'd done maybe 1 or 2, and that was quite daunting in the past. But you know, when you're faced with that expanse of whiteness, it's like, what do I do? How do I get this right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it really was just that urge it's like, you need to do this. You need to get on that and just express yourself and not question it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so happy that you did. I'm just going to read this comment from Soulful Renegade. Thank you so much. You put, yes, exactly this. I feel that most things I say from a felt known sense is not valid unless I can back it up with peer-reviewed evidence.
Yeah.
And that I can't just write from my heart and soul. Oh, yeah. You're definitely not alone in that. And, you know, that's what certainly I personally am so passionate about, that holding space for us to be able to express in that way, and trust that whatever is coming through is what's meant to come through. And, you know, when we started speaking about this book, Zoe, it was like, this is something quite different for us at the Unbound Press, because the books that we've released so far, they've been, I think, like, a couple have had some illustrations in, but very, very minimal. Like they're words. Like, Whereas this is, you know, it's going to be a combination of the written word, lots of visuals, including your artwork. And, you know, when we first connected, it was like, oh, I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, how we're going to do it. And it's falling into place as we go. We're finding our way as we go. Yeah. But what's the process like for you, bringing it together and like deciding or knowing what needs to be in the book?
Again, it's been like exact kind of opposite of how I've ever approached a book before. It's just kind of come to me bit by bit, and I've just followed those nudges. So at one point, you know, I didn't really have a structure for the book, but I had an idea of some of the themes that I kind of wanted to explore. And absolutely that wisdom piece, that wisdom over knowledge piece is a significant part of this book. Because and I think this is that so needs addressed. It so needs to be fully addressed and expressed right now, because, you know, we're done with centuries of oppression, of that kind of, you know, divine feminine like wisdom. And I just on a little tangent, I want to tell you about my daughter, who came to me yesterday saying that she wanted to make a balm, like a kind of a bug balm type thing. And I was like, oh, I don't know if you've really got the right ingredients, darling. I know that we don't have tea tree oil, and I think that's pretty much an essential component of that. And she went away and she just decided to make it anyway. This is what I would have done when I was little as well. I just like, oh, what do they know? I'll just make it myself. And she put in cedarwood instead, which has very similar properties. And I was like, did you know that? Or did you like look it up? Or did you just kind of go with what you had? And she was like, well, I just thought it seemed like the right thing to put in. And I was like, that's just, it's so amazing, so beautiful. She's not that knowledgeable about these things on a kind of intellectual level, but she knew.
Yeah.
So bring me back, what we were talking about.
I don't know, I'm just like, that kind of brings tears to my eyes, because we do know that we always know, and it's trust that is the key piece, and it's so easy for us to get knocked out of that. So beautiful. No, I was talking about bringing the book together, and like, how do you know what's meant to be in it? How's that process for you?
So I knew that I wanted it to be like a multi-sensory experience. And I talk a lot about whole being, and I didn't just want it to kind of be like words, or even, so there's poetry. Pretty much with every painting I do, there's a poem that comes through with it. Not always, but quite often. And so there's poetry, and there's pieces of reflection of where I might be talking about a part of my own story, or just, I'm quite a philosopher. So, kind of bringing in elements of what's going on in the world right now and just kind of reflecting on that. So there's those pieces as well. And then there's also kind of meditations where they're a very active component. I call them transmutations, because it's taking you from one feeling, like it might be, there's so much darkness around right now, I don't know how to cope with that, and transmuting that through feelings verbalized, essentially, and taking it out right the way through to the other side. So you're not just kind of trying to kind of gloss over it, but you're actually taking it all the way through. You're acknowledging all of those feelings and transmuting them. So I knew that I wanted to kind of access for people to access different parts of themselves on a soul level in what I was sharing. So that was the words, the different ways of kind of sharing verbally. But then there's also obviously going to be my paintings, or bits of my paintings. I don't know if most people know, but my paintings are all very big.
Yeah, they are.
So kind of reducing them to like little pictures in a book, full size won't work that well probably. But so I'll definitely be sharing bits of those in the book, and hopefully kind of bringing it all together so it's a really immersive experience. So you can literally open it and experience it on all the different levels of self and soul. And I don't know how else to describe that, really.
Okay, it goes beyond words. So I've just got such a strong felt sense of your book, and I can imagine it being here, like in my presence, and I can just feel the energetic quality of it. It just feels like it's just giving off such a potent energy. Just having it in my presence is going to be really, really potent, and it's going to be really powerful for everybody who gets to have a copy. And it's so great that you mentioned the word transmutation, because actually Kate Moores has just was putting about early lockdown. She said that space really gave us gold and darkness, transformative times, which are ongoing, aren't they? Really,
for sure. Oh my god, yeah. But up until that point, I had denied myself the right even to paint as a hobby. You know, it felt indulgent and it felt superfluous and it felt, just like, what's the point really? But when pushed to it, my soul knew, actually, and it is always known, because I've always had those nudges, like, oh, I'd really like to do that again, I'd really like to get back to it, but nah.
Yeah it's yeah, again, I resonate with that so much. Like, I always knew when I was little, like, always loved writing, like, just loved it so much. And even, you know, up to my mid 40s, you know, when I was doing this work and on this path, I would still just push that away. It's like, oh no, that's for somebody else, it's not for me. Or, oh yeah, maybe I could do it, but I'd have to do it in a very particular kind of way. You know, that it was very kind of like professional and business-like, and like had a like really specific purpose. And you know, if I'm going to do it, that it has to do that. And it's took me a long time to realize, no, that's not the way. Like, I can just allow what wants to come through. So thank you for just modeling that to us so beautifully.
Honestly, it started when I was about 8 years old and a swim lesson. I sat back with my cousin because she couldn't swim and she was in the beginner class and she wasn't confident enough to do it herself, I guess. So she wanted to sit back with her, and I did. And that's when I think my people pleasing started, and when I started to dim my light. And then I'm like, oh, but it kind of feels good, right? Because I'm helping her out.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets mixed up in your head because it really doesn't feel good, because I knew I wasn't supposed to be in that beginner class.
Yeah.
And as I started excavating that, then I was like, oh, there was a time in 9th grade, and oh, there's this boyfriend, and oh, there's the, you know, and it really has helped me heal from that stuff and that I went through, and realize, okay, well, I may be 51 now, but I can still shine, right? Like, that stuff just made me who I am.
Completely. Yeah, I'm with you there. As a 50-year-old woman, I'm like, yes, I reckon that the 50s are the power decade to shine. But but when thank you for sharing that, because it makes me recognize how, like, we don't have to remember all the different examples of where we've dimmed our light. But if we remember some of those key examples, those key experiences, like you say, then we can go, oh, okay, I see where that pattern came from, and it helps to start shifting it. Like, I remember at school having an experience where, you know, I was writing really freely. I talk about this in Heal Your Inner Good Girl, you know, writing really freely, really enjoying, like, expressing my soul onto the page, and then handing it into a teacher and her saying, like, this is absolute rubbish in front of the class. And in that moment, like, something in me just shut off. I dimmed my light. I wanted to shrink. You know, there's so much kind of power in recognizing those moments, because it makes sense of those times from, you know, through the rest of our lives when we've dimmed our light. And there's something about just recognizing that helps us to start shining more fully. So I'm looking forward to reading more of these stories.
You know, just because there's just so much power in building other women up and relating to the place where they dim their light, because you know, I probably have done that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. So
exactly. So what kind of women, what kind of writers are you in particular looking for, Carrie?
Everybody.
Yeah.
I think because I want to bring us together in unity and help each other shine a light. I want women from every religion, every background, every race, every situation. They can be a CEO of a company, or, you know, work in a hotel as a maid. And that's where we begin to come together, you know, Black, white, Hispanic. We are all women. And all have been socialized a certain way, and we all have been raised a certain way. And even though that looks different across cultures, or even from family to family, we're still women.
Yeah.
And to come together and recognize that we are way more alike than different, because I think there's so much division across the world nowadays, that this is just a little piece to bring us together. And, when you light a candle, you do not dim another candle.
Yeah.
You do not dim the first candle by lighting that candle, and then it just gets brighter and brighter. And that is my vision for this book. And maybe this is only the first one, and we have a Soul Shine 2 and 50 more women in, and just like eventually all the women's voice world will be heard.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So here for that. I'm just having a look. There's a question here. So next you're saying, so I'm currently going through that remembrance process now. It's a wild ride and also healing too. Yes. What's the timeline for this collab? Yeah, great question, Nix. I mean, the book is actually going to be released on November the 22nd of this year, which is the anniversary of the Unbound Press, which is very exciting. So we're looking to have all of the pieces completed by May time, towards the end of May. The group is coming together already. We've got some amazing contributors. We're having group writing sessions throughout the process, like about one a month. Excuse me. So we're supporting everyone to write their pieces by the end of May, and then we'll be going through the process of bringing it all together. And I just want to say, for anyone watching this who maybe thinks, oh, I'm really feeling called to be part of this, but I'm not sure, I don't think of myself as a writer. I'm not sure that I'd be able to bring the words through, or who would want to hear my story. I just want to let you know, if you're feeling the call, there's a reason for that. And we're, both Carrie and I and everyone at the Unbound Press, and also the rest of the contributors, we're all going to be there holding space for you. And the world really does change every time we share our stories and share our magic, give ourselves permission to do that. So let's get this magic rippling out into the world.
I agree. If you change one person's life or one person's trajectory by sharing your story, it's worth it.
Yeah, so I think when Wild Egg, what I call downloaded, because I didn't even think I was writing this book at all. I was writing an entirely different book in my mind. And then Wild Egg had other ideas. So kind of this idea download, the title first came, and then the idea kind of started to download. And actually, when that happened, I had this horrible moment of vulnerability, I'm telling essentially my story. And well, it was initially going to be a memoir. So I thought, I was kind of I don't know how I feel about that. But it just seemed to be calling to me so much. I thought, okay, I'm just going to trust what's happening. So I embarked for probably a period of maybe 8 months or so. I worked on a memoir, and I got to a point where I was encouraged to sort of pitch to an agent, which I did do, got a rejection, which was fine, to be expected. And then I thought, actually, before I go any further, because I'm so committed to this, I think what I'm going to do is pay for a little bit of professional feedback, bit of guidance before I maybe try and pitch again. So I did that, and I got some really helpful feedback from a kind of woman who's in the publishing industry. And actually she said to me, can I give you a piece of advice? And I just said, by all means. And she said, I really, really, really think that you should consider writing this as a novel. Right, okay. And she said, I just think that, you've got good characterization. And she said, I just feel intuitively it really lends itself to being a novel. So I thought, right, okay. So I kind of sat with that a bit, and I had this period of time where I was like, Wild Egg, do you want to be a novel, or are you a memoir? I thought, I'm going to try and just still be in that energy of being guided by what the book wants to be. And I did have this slightly, and I think I would have years ago just got so angry. I think I probably would have given up. Oh, for goodness sake, do you know what I mean? But I thought, do you know what? This is part of the process, and it's all about leaning in and being guided and being messy. So I'm going to just roll with it. And there was probably a period of maybe 2 or 3 months where I was kind of I would be getting flashes, or I'd see a little scene or a bit of dialogue, and I would just roll with it. Sometimes it was shown up as memoir, and sometimes it was a novel. And I was like, really? I was kind of doing both at the same time, literally going, I don't even know what you want to be. And I was like, okay. I was just like bowing down. Do you mean like with humility going, I just don't know what you want, but I'll just do whatever you say. So I kept kind of going at this, just not knowing what was happening, to be quite honest. Then it was almost like the book had been going, should we just like test her out and see how committed she is? Like, so we're going to play with her, mess with her mind a little bit. And I kept going. And then after a couple of months, it kind of seemed to settle. And I was like, oh, you do want to be a novel. Then I got Holly as the character came, and then it kind of seemed to stabilize. And then I just went off on the journey of like thinking, well, how do I take what was my much longer journey, which was about 7 years in total, and kind of accelerate that into a smaller time period, but effectively make the arc the same and the journey the same, but faster and with some different things happening. And then it kind of became quite fun to imagine what might happen to achieve the same effect, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to read, so I can only imagine what it was like to write. And as you were talking about the process there, Jennifer, I was thinking it's so interesting the way what you experience with the book and like checking in, like what should I do, this or this, like mirrors the process that Holly goes through. So it's so interesting when that happens.
Yeah.
And that leads to my next question, which is how low this will be to answer, but how much of you is in Holly? I was really curious. I was like, I kind of want to go through the book with you and go, right, did this happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say Holly is like an amplified version of the me before the journey I went through, if that makes sense. So I think certainly writing part one, which I guess goes from the moment basically that the husband says, you know, I really want to have a baby, to making a choice, that's very, very close to what actually happened. And then after that, I would say the kind of arc, a lot of it is certainly it's grounded in a lot of my experience, and the arc is very much my journey. But then I think Holly's just a bit more of she's like me, but I've kind of got to play a bit more, so sometimes she's possibly a bit more extreme than I would have been. But I mean, there's a lot of me in there, definitely.
Fantastic. And this is the fun thing. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that the whole book is really powerful and goes through the whole kind of gamut of emotions, definitely. But I was thinking as I was reading it, like so many women who are wanting to write and share their stories feel blocked often because it's like, oh, this feels vulnerable, and what will other people think? And I'm writing about other people's experiences within that, and it can feel really edgy to do that. And actually to write it as a story, as to write it as a novel, is just a really powerful way to be sharing elements of your experience.
And I think I had that whole thing, you know, first of all, there was that awful vulnerability of sharing your own story. And then, like, once it was going to be a novel, I had that, oh my God, I'm not creative enough to write a novel. You know what I mean? It's one thing to sort of like kind of narrate actual experience, but I was like, oh, I can't do, you know, I kind of had a bit of a freak out of like, I can't do this and make up a character. And but then I just sort of thought, well, if that's what, as you rightly say, the thing I kept holding on to was, Jen, the book's Wild Eggs. The book's about, you know, my language for what you talk about, unbinding. The process has to be wild eggy. You know what I mean? You've got to like, it's got to mirror. So therefore, just surrender and like just trust that you can do this. You will be able to find. It'll just come through you. So that's been such a massive process for me, you know, because I did not used to be like that at all.